Everybody, to a special meeting of the York County Board of Commissioners, and we have special guests with us tonight, which is our zoning board. This is a commissioner meeting. It is not a zoning board meeting, so it was advertised that way. The zoning board is they have to follow the open meetings law, but they can be here as a group as long as there's no decisions made on their part. So I wanted to get by that first. I did bring a flag in, so we will do a tradition. We will stand, turn to the back, and have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we're going to try to go tonight, so I would ask those that are going to talk to speak up. We're going to try to go without microphones. This room seems to be okay without that, so if you can hear, maybe move a little bit forward, and we'll ask everybody to speak up. Kelly, roll call, please.
Gross.
Present.
Bowman.
Present.
Ott. Sykes.
Present.
Obermeyer.
Here, and open meetings law is posted on our back wall, and it is the new version of the open meetings law. And also in the hallway upstairs and on our website. Proof of publication was in the News Times the 29th and also on our website. Next up, guys, we need to review and approve the minutes of our previous board meeting.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Sykes.
Yes.
Bowman.
Yes.
Gross.
Yes.
Ott. Obermeyer.
Yes, and adopt tonight's agenda, which has got one item on it.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Bowman.
Yes.
Gross.
Yes.
Sykes.
Yes.
Ott. Obermeyer.
Yes. Okay, it has the one item, but with the open meetings law that was passed this last legislative session as of July 19th, we need to allow public comment at all of our meetings now. And so we'll take a few minutes. If there are anybody from the public that would like to make a comment, they are more than welcome to do so now. Just ask you to do the same thing we'll try to do is speak up. If I see nobody get up, we'll keep moving. Okay, tonight what we'd like to do is, obviously York County has been going through this for a few years. Zoning and different things with the solar and just trying to fix some of our zoning regulations. The zoning board did a great job. They presented some rules and regs to us as a board of commissioners, and they went through all the steps. We went through our steps. We had the public hearing a few weeks ago. And basically what I wanted to do was we brought Keith Marvin and his company, and he has a guest with him, or I would say a worker, John, what was John's name?
Shepherd.
John Shepherd with him tonight too. And they're going to redo our comp plan for us, and the two things really fit together. And I thought it would best to have this meeting to go through some stuff and ask them to visit just a little bit about the procedure of the comp plan and how it fits with the zoning and how it fits in particular with what we've been doing. And then everybody in this room as well as the newspaper will know going forward, these are kind of the steps that we're going to take. This is what we feel is right. We've been at this for a while, so there's really no reason to push it unless we really feel like we have the right product that we want. And if we do, we do, and we go forward, but I just thought this would be a great way to get the ball rolling. So Keith, is you or John?
Which way do you want it? What do you want to talk about first, Randy?
I want to talk about the overview of the process,
okay,
like we did just a little bit with the comp plan,
okay,
and what we'll be going through. And then if John wants to touch on more specifics, I assume that's what he's here for, then we can go over that.
Okay, well, thank you. Keith Marvin, Marvin Planning Consultants, 382 North 4th, David City. So as Randy said, we've been hired to work with the county and to come up with a new comprehensive plan and a new set of zoning regulations, trying to fix, as I say on the zoning, we're gonna fix what needs to be fixed and keep what needs to be saved. We typically don't like to reinvent things if it's working. So what we're gonna do is, this is kind of, this tonight, I didn't have it in mind that way, but this is a kickoff, we do a kickoff meeting, we've got both boards here, so I mean, I can get you some handouts that will talk about show you what I'm talking about today. Normally I would have those handouts, but we'll do that, and we'll be also on the website. We'll get Chris the link for that website down the road, make sure he has it so we can get it up on the county's website. So first thing we're going to do, and typically that's a kickoff meeting, and this, what we're doing tonight essentially is talk about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it and how it's going to be involved. So again, what we might do is cover the Planning 101 stuff when we have our first meeting, just to touch base on it. But with the beginning of this process, we start by pulling together all the GIS data. We've had a conversation with the assessor's office already. We've got that working. We start developing a schedule. We're still kind of working on that a little bit. But then we also start digging into the detail work, the demographics and the different stuff that's out there. And we've already started doing that. Your invoicing should show you that we are working on the project. I'd say we've probably got better part about 4 or 5 chapters, 6 chapters started and necessary to the point of review. So we can start getting some of that. This is going to consist of population, housing, economics, and those other types of things that are important to start building the background information on. The other thing that we'll start looking at is statute requires us to look at facilities in the county. It doesn't get specific on some of that stuff, but what we're going to do is we actually have dug into this deep enough that there's enough data out there that we use that instead of doing one chapter on just facilities, we have multiple chapters. We're going to have a chapter on county parks. That includes the parks in the municipalities, because if I live in the county, out in the rural areas, I still come into York and I still may use the park. It's part of the whole county, even though it's in the city. And we were talking about the soccer fields that Orville had got started years ago. We're going to look at parks. We're going to look at the actual facilities that the county maintains and operates. We will do a public safety chapter that's going to look at law enforcement. It'll look at fire and EMS services and emergency management. Then we're going to also talk about education. Probably have a chapter. You got enough school districts in the county that we will probably go through and have a chapter just on the educational system in the county. And then we'll also do we're finding that this is becoming popular. It's something we've actually included in the last few years. It's called a public health chapter. We look at your health facilities and other types of things. You've got a health district in the city. Four Corners is here. So we'll take a look at some of their plans and some of the things that they talk about. I tell people this kind of came about because of COVID, but it's not COVID-centric. It's one of those things that we've just... What's ironic about public health being added back in is public health is the reason we started getting planning and zoning in this country in the first place. So it's kind of come full circle again. So we're going to... That's all the background information that we're going to build off of. Then we're going to dive into analysis of your environment and your natural resources. I know Orville in the past has done some of this. We get into a little bit more detail and a little bit more mapping because the data's there. And we will get a good picture of what your resources are in your natural environment and see if we have some areas that we need to be careful with or protect down the road. And just make sure that those are maintained down. So everything we're doing, in a nutshell, is building us up to building your future land use plan. So your future land use plan then guides your zoning regulations as we go forward. So, one of the things that we like to teach, and this is what my attorneys that I've dealt with in my career have, is the comp plan is built so that it becomes that document that if you get a zoning request, you should be able to go back to, hopefully go back to the comp plan and find reasons why or why not to allow that zoning to happen. It provides what the attorneys will tell you is called a findings of fact. So that's why we build and do as much detail as we do into the comprehensive plan, because it guides the future land use, and then we add the transportation, and then implementation. A little bit different approach on our implementation versus some. Our implementation chapter is actually a very short chapter, because when we get into housing, economics, economic development, parks, all of those, we build the goals and action items into those individual chapters instead of everything at the end of the document. So if I'm interested in housing, I can pull this whole chapter out and have the data as well as what the goals and action items are for housing. I don't have to go pull this out, then go back here and start shuffling through the back end to find the necessary things that I want to work with. Does that make sense to everybody? And you can interrupt me at any time as we go through this, because I can keep talking forever, so. But once we do that, unless there's a reason to do so, I like to take the comp plan and then set it to the side. And then we work on the zoning. Because the reason being is when I've had this happen in the past, we adopt the comp plan, we dig into the zoning, and I have people say, that's not what we want to do. That's what you told me you wanted to do over here in the comp plan. But they need to be consistent. So I put it aside so that if we fine tune some things through the zoning code, then we can go back and fine tune them in the comp plan to make sure they stay consistent. Unless there's a pressing need to adopt the comp plan, we typically will put it to the side. So all of this is going to take somewhere between 16 and 24 months, I believe is what we said. 14 to 18 months. But one of the things I will tell you is, how many in here are farmers? Okay. If you want to follow this, one of the things that I automatically build into my calendar on these is that we don't meet during planting season and we don't meet during harvest. Because we're not going to get people here if it's good weather. And things need to be cut and brought in to the bins. We're not going to get people here. So why even try? So we do take that into account as we build the schedule. So, this year, harvest looks like it could be very early. So what I would probably look at as part of what we're going to also do that I skipped over is we get into, you'll have lots of opportunities, both boards and the public, to comment. We will be putting together, and we're starting it now, putting together a SurveyMonkey survey that will be specific to your county. We put together postcards that are about this big, and typically in a county this size, we're going to work with the county staff to put these out around the county. And what they'll have on the front is a picture, tell you what it's about. In the back, it's going to have QR codes and links to get on to either the website or to the survey or both. And on the website, so the website is going to have things like, as the county approves the drafts that we do, they'll get loaded up on the website. As we, the survey will have a link. We will also have a link to an item called crowdsource mapping. This is a thing that we use with our software. It allows you to, as I say, put it out. You can upload 10 pictures every time you visit. What I ask people to do is sign up for it, the website, because if you do, then you get updates whenever we do something to the website. You get an email. So as somebody uploads, you sign in, log in, You upload 10, you can have to do 10 pictures, like uploading the good, the bad, and the ugly. We want to know all aspects of York County by doing this. So, when we do that, you can log out. If you got more than 10, come back right away, and you can upload another 10. So, that is one thing we can do. We will have town hall meetings in the county, and we will be also doing, trying to see also what we put in here. We will also be doing interviews with key focus groups and individuals across the county as part of this to get their inputs. So this is a very aggressive and a very, I would say, to not be punny, but a very comprehensive approach to how we put together our plans. But we got to be careful with the postcards, because we're going to start getting inundated in the mail with postcards because it's political season. So we are very sensitive to that. And that's another good reason for us to possibly just to put them out in key locations and take them to service clubs and stuff like that, to pass them out during meetings, you know, to Rotary or wherever, and get the word out that way. Otherwise, they're going to probably get in the mail and they'll throw them away, because they'll think it's the same thing as everything else they're getting. So that's the process in a very fast nutshell.
Okay.
So,
Anybody from the board have any questions for Keith right now?
What's your preliminary interaction with the zoning boards?
well,
Get the ball rolling?
okay, you guys tell us what you want. You guys have to give us some direction. We talk about having a steering committee. That steering committee can be made up of members of the planning commission. It could be the entire planning commission, or it could be part of them, part of the county board, or it could be that and a mixture of people from the community. It's however you want to do it. We're open, there's no set guidelines for how we want to do it. It's how you want to do it yourselves. So, as soon as you guys can figure that out for me, we can start developing that all we need to.
Okay.
So, we're very flexible on that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. What was wrong with the zoning plan that the zoning committee come up with?
I won't say there was anything wrong with it. This is part of the comp plan and part of how the two, as you heard, just go together. So that's the step we're in right now.
Who's got the final say, so the commissioners?
The commissioners do, yes. John.
Yeah.
So the
I'm gonna
process.
stand up here.
So you can broadcast better. Not sure which way you're gonna go with it, but, you know, obviously the part that you get in on is the zoning part.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So if we was to say, I think he already touched on how the two are gonna work together and how they guide each other, and they need to mirror each other. Otherwise, it just isn't gonna run very well. Have you had an opportunity to look at the rules and regs that were presented at the public hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so as we go through this here too, are you in the position to give, some recommendations to not only the Board of Commissioners, but the zoning board too, even though their process is done, some recommendations on what you see as positives and or negatives in that rules and regulations?
That really, as Keith described, our process is very flexible, that we're here as your advisor, that we have our broad terms of our contract, but also you have very specific needs at this moment, which we can use then. So it's all part of the same process.
Okay.
So what I can do for you now is talk a little bit about how the different parts work together, and then my specific review on the solar proposal, if
Okay.
that's okay.
Perfect.
So-
And if I could interject, the reason I sent this on to John to look at it is because he's been doing it for other clients in the office that we have. But John spent most of his career as an administrator. So he looks at this stuff a little bit differently than I do. He looks at it from a standpoint of how do I implement this, and how do we, what makes sense from that standpoint, as opposed to, I've never been on the public sector side, and I rely on a lot of people to give me feedback that what works and what doesn't work when I do zoning codes.
So again, my name is John Shepard, that I'm a senior planner with Marvin Planning Consultants. I've been in here in Nebraska a couple of years. I grew up in Fargo on the north end of Highway 81, and have worked across the northern Great Plains and the Rocky Mountain states. That I've worked for counties, I've worked for a regional development commission. I've worked in much smaller places than this and much larger places. We ended up coming back down off the mountain just because the price of everything in Colorado is crazy, and people were just a little more real in the areas we work with. But Marvin Planning, we're working from eastern Iowa into Nebraska, down into Kansas. So we try to pull that. Keith knows Nebraska inside out. He's written a lot of the renewable energy codes in place now. He's worked with communities and counties, updating them. I've worked in places that really like renewable energy, and other places where not so much. We're not pro, we're not against. We are what fits York County, so that's the way I look at it. As Keith said, that I do bring a perspective as an administrator, but also a personal perspective from my background, that I am pro-property rights, but that cuts both ways on these projects. You have the property rights of the people who want to develop their property, and then you have the impacts on the people next door. Every community has to balance those property rights in a way that fits their community. So what worked in Minnesota isn't necessarily going to work in Nebraska, and certainly not what they're doing in Wyoming, but we bring those all together here. I also have done some work in traditional energy development and oil and gas, and talk about some controversy and bringing things together. One thing I've learned myself is it has to come from the bottom up, but you're doing the right thing by looking at what everybody else is doing and trying to fit York County. So that's one way to tell you where we take our perspective, but the other side where this is an interesting time where the board finds itself looking at adoption, that currently you have a comprehensive plan. We're about to update that whatever zoning amendments you make has to be, as Keith said, consistent with your comprehensive plan. So the first thing you have to ask yourself as a board is, what is the current proposal in front of you? Is that consistent with the comp plan you've got? Or do we need to back into it in the new plan? So this discussion that you're having, that the Planning Commission has had, feeds into what we may have to customize in the comprehensive plan. Because Keith mentioned the required elements. One of those required elements is your energy element, where the state legislature said you have to address energy. The reason you do that is because that's the rational basis for whatever renewable energy regulation you adopt. So first question is the current proposal supported by what you've got in your comp plan, or does it need to wait until the new comp plan comes around? That's your judgment call. We're here to help you evaluate those things. If whatever you go forward with, if you do that before the comprehensive plan, then we know we need to back that up and have the basis for that. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to have a whole book itself on the pros and cons of renewable energy, but we put several pages together and recount the latest and greatest. We give you the tools to justify and support your decisions. They will also be the tools then that the planning commission will use if and when you have a project proposal comes up. And they will look at the requirements of the zoning regulations, but they will also have to make a judgment call. Is this in conformance with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan? Yes,
I
sir.
have a question. Your your comprehensive plan that you're talking about here is renewed about every 10 years, correct? They have to
Typically-
go over it about every 10 years.
Typically, because we look 20 years out,
Yeah,
and it may be things change in 5 years, it may be things change in 10 years. It
well,
depends on
things are gonna be changing in about 5 months. So, when we start talking about the comprehensive plan 10 years down the line, you don't know what kind of a federal government we're gonna have by that time. So I'm thinking that, and I'm thinking the zoning board is sitting here that have done a lot of study around, and they've made their recommendations. And I think they talked to a lot of the farmers in this county. I'm not talking about the state, I'm not talking about the Midwest or anything else. We're talking about this county. And they know what this county wants as a whole. Yes, everybody has property rights. I've tried to ask several people and nobody can give me an answer. When you buy a piece of property, how far under the ground is your rights to that property?
Well, I would have to defer to the attorneys in terms of mineral rights.
Mineral rights?
Mineral
water-
rights, water rights, they're different in Nebraska and other states I've worked with. So that you do have your different estates. You have your ground estate that zoning typically covers. You do have your air estate, which we regulate, for example, through the airport hazard overlays. Because FAA says, FAA says you have to, or you won't get any more FAA funding if you do that. So there are different estates that are covered under, back to common law. We're not attorneys, but we have to know the law, and we do have Keith has an attorney on retainer who does give us advice. So that's one of the things we look at. At what point can we ethically recommend different aspects of the comprehensive plan, but also restrictions in the zoning? Because as you go through that, there is case law in Nebraska, in the circuit, and nationally about the balance between, and the biggest thing in zoning is equal protection. You have to treat similarly situated properties in a similar manner. You can't do spot zones. But that also means you can't treat different classes of property differently without a rational basis. That's what we get. This comp plan is really a business plan for the county. It is, what you're doing is you have a product, York County, and what is that? You are providing a home. You are providing some place for people to have jobs and employment and investment. What do they need to see to make an investment in your county and be assured of investment-backed expectations? So with the comprehensive plan, we're not telling you what to do. It's definitely not the county telling the people what to do. It's the people telling the county board and the planning commission what they want to see to invest in the community. So that's the basis that we're going through with that. But we have to use that then to look at different standards because they can come through. So we look at it from both what do folks want and what is likely to hold up in court. So that's where we go through with this balance.
Yeah, and John said something about what will stand up in court. We've got a lot of different things happening in the state right now between about a handful of different counties that are going to what I would call extremes. And until somebody takes them to court, they're legal. But the minute somebody gets sued, we're going to find out just how legal they really are. Because there is such a thing as, if you set a setback at a certain distance, that may be to the point that you aren't treating everybody equally. It's not equal protection. It's what's the term I want to use? Basically, it's unsubstantiated as far as the ability, why is that setback? Our attorney that we keep on retainer, we always toss him a question. We ask him, okay, do you think that a mile's too far on something? He goes, what's that based on? If the judge asks you why a mile, can you tell them a rational reason why you have 1 mile? Or is it the reason going to be because, or some other reason out there? That's why the comp plan's important, is we start establishing some of those things in there to start making decisions. I've got an old past client right now that we've been working with. They're concerned with wind turbines. They've seen what some of these counties have been doing with 3-mile separation distances from property lines, which basically, I've told the attorneys, and they kind of shake their head at me. I says, if you're going to do that, you basically have zoned them out. Let's be honest and just say we don't want them, and see if you can stand up in court that way. I'd rather be honest than to, indirectly set up some bogus setback and make it illegal for everybody.
But we just don't have a lot of direction from the courts yet on some of those issues, and somebody is going to get to be the test case. Do you want that to be you? That's your determination.
Yeah.
It depends on your appetite for risk.
Right now, 2 counties I can think of that we haven't worked with, I'm really hoping they're test cases, because I don't want to have to deal with my clients. And those 2 counties are Buffalo and Gage County.
But you also have a difference in the, so from the edge of the flyway, between the flyway, there's that's a whole different situation within because of the
Yeah.
endangered species in the flyway. So, outside of that, then you have to look at what are your situations. But when it comes to the solar project, there are some places that have been very accommodating and others that are not. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with the current administration, because there is, again, legislation that's gone through Congress, but we are more concerned with the case law that tends to take time to work itself through the system. That case law has also been working its way west. That some of it's been on the East Coast, where they're much more friendly to this stuff. Then you get over through Illinois and Iowa, but who's going to be the test case come Nebraska? And then further west, you see, then you get into, again, different appetite for risk, where these things are going. So when we say we don't want to put you in a situation where you're going to have to go to court, yes, we may be more conservative about that than others, but that's our advice, and you have your attorneys and they will advise you appropriately. We're not trying to tell you or tell the folks who've put a lot of time and effort into this. We're trying to say, based on our experience personally and in other communities, these are some concerns that you might want to address. So we did write some of those up for the zoning administrator and the county board back in June, and just talked about where some of the best practices are with renewable energy right now. One of those things that we're seeing demand for is battery energy storage systems. Now, just because you don't have it in this proposal, it may be that just has to wait. But if the folks who want to build this, whatever's coming, if something's not listed in the regulations, it's not allowed. So if they want to do battery energy storage, time out, you might want to tack that on. We've got a model we've developed. There's been some guidance that's just come out this spring from some folks who have studied this. As a presentation at a national conference up in Minneapolis, one of the rural co-ops up there. They're in the suburbs, and Minnesota, of course, is very pro-renewable stuff, mostly. But they've gone to battery energy storage to firm the co-ops system, because they're growing so fast they can't keep up transmission capacity. It's a long way of saying that they're coming up with standards for these things that are going into very densely populated areas, which may be overkill for what you want to do, but they're out there. And so we can either prepare for that or react to it when it comes up. So that's something that we can do now, or we can wait till we do the overall zoning stuff.
Okay.
Depends what you want to do. One of the things that we've done with solar that really Keith has worked up a model that treats small-scale solar rooftop stuff pretty much like any accessory. Does somebody have to get a permit to put an an air conditioner up? Then maybe they don't need a permit for a rooftop solar thing. That can you make it easy to do those net metering things, and then focus on the things that are really important, because do you really want to spend your time approving conditional use permits for rooftop solar? It's kind of seems to be overkill, but again, your local culture and comment.
I was gonna say, solar and wind, it's a lot like a cattle operation. You've got these small ones over here, and you've got these really big ones over here. And we don't really worry about these smaller guys if they're gonna be doing it for themselves or whatever. But the big ones are where we wanna focus the energy on.
One thing we did notice in the proposal, I think you may be inadvertently preventing agricultural solar. You get a lot of, I see a lot of these where they're putting solar panels on water pumps or electric fences. You want to make sure that you're not inadvertently prohibiting those or making those go through a conditional use permit, because I'm sure that's certainly not your intention. But again, if it's not specifically listed, it's prohibited. Some of that may be taken care of if you have a good separation between on network and off network, because a lot of those ag things aren't feeding back to the grid. They're just microgrid. They're their own little thing. Different counties are approaching that differently. As a zoning administrator, I don't like the approach of, I don't see it, I don't hear it. If it's there, somebody's going to complain about it, and it's going to be, somebody who moved. It's maybe the people who are your neighbors now don't care, but then they sell the ranch and move to Texas. The new people, wait a minute, what's going on? So sometimes I'm a little more paranoid because I've been there. There's different approaches. You got to find what level of detail works for you. This comes back to something Keith had mentioned that I tried to bring up here too, is administrative capacity. There are a lot of things in the current proposal that would work if you had full-time zoning administrator with support staff. Is that what you want to do? If you do, that's fine. But if you write standards, you need to be able to enforce them. So it may be that York County is growing, that things are going on here. You're on the interstate corridor, that you don't look like the counties north or south of here. But that's going to be your long-range decision, but you don't want to inadvertently create regulations you can't enforce. That's again, that complaint-based enforcement. You're not going to have your zoning administrator going out looking for trouble, but things happen, especially if you've got out-of-state developers who aren't watching the store.
I don't know, Chris seems like he's kind of a badass.
Well, it's just, and I'm not trying to raise a red flag here, but just as an overworked zoning administrator, I have some sympathy there, but also take it from the view of the property owners, from your neighbors, the people who come up to you at the grocery store. They say, I called the zoning office and, it took them 3 days to get back to me. If you put in things that take a lot of time, it's just going to take more time. But you need to do what's right for your county. And if that means adding staff at some point, you do that. There's some provisions in there, for example, the noise. You have noise, you've got light meters. The provisions in there may be very reasonable for a larger jurisdiction that has staff. There are some provisions that the developer will be responsible for hiring specialists to make these. One, do you trust their specialists? You want to have a say in those. And can you do it simpler that fits a county of your size? That's up to you. I'm just saying, hey, don't just adopt what somebody else did. But if that's what you want to do the super secret noise thing because it's more accurate, that's great. I like using the noise app on my phone so I can just check stuff. But again, I'm not complaining, I'm just, take that into account on how you want to do that. The other thing with the noise that we've worked with a couple clients with noise on both solar and wind, and the battery energy storage systems too. Those things hum, that's just what they do. But, you know, irrigation wells make noise, especially if they're on a diesel generator. If you're putting in a low noise standard for this specific use, and the farmer across the road has an irrigation well at this noise level, that may leave you open to an equal protection claim. I don't know that that's been litigated in the courts yet, just, it's something that we're concerned about because I couldn't go in front of a judge and justify that. I also know the technology is changing, so what they were building a couple years ago may not be what they're building. And if you want to have high standards, then you have high standards. And if I had a situation with a manufacturer of a product that's not legal across the country but is in Colorado, and they have
We all
backup
smoke it.
generators, and the backup generators, because we would lose power because it was up in the mountains. The backup generators were 100 decibels. And they couldn't meet the 80 decibel standard. There was no generator that was big enough for their facilities. They just couldn't do it. We worked around some ways on that, plus they were in the industrial park. But think about that in terms of, we don't want to set a bar so low it creates problems for other folks. I also believe in, but like I was saying, you can set high standards because I believe the market will respond to a demand for higher standards. And if you say these things have to be quiet, they're going to find a way to make them quiet if it's worth them to do the project. So again, that was something that I had brought up. So, excuse me. So I brought up take a look at what you do with the small stuff. Maybe make those easier, but you may actually need to make it harder on the larger ones. That we've got this category in the middle, and you've got 4 categories in the proposal, which is doable. I don't know that you're large enough county you need 4, but it's not a deal killer. Sometimes it's easier to do 4, and sometimes it's just more complicated. It's what fits you. That there is a category we've seen, but maybe you won't see that here, is the neighborhood, which is not necessarily net metering, but where they set up a solar panel for a specific neighborhood. And that might be an unincorporated community. That would really be something, a question back to your utility, your local utility, not that utility. If they don't see demand for it, maybe it's not a problem.
I've got I know a housing developer that would really like to do that type of project, build out several homes and put enough solar energy in there to power everything.
Yeah, we were talking about that in Grand Island, but
Yeah.
anyways, that may or may not fit what's in here, so I'm not saying your categories are more or enough, it just seems a little overly complicated for what you need, but I can see where the zoning committee was trying to look at being prepared for future growth. So that's not necessarily a bad thing either. The application requirements that are on here, that I had noticed some things which may need more specifics, such as definition of critical habitat. We've had pushback on renewable projects from the old wetland classifications because those maps are hidden in a book somewhere. We're still arguing about what to use going forward. It's just be aware that what you've proposed may still get argued when somebody comes in for a permit. One of the things I did want to mention to you on here, well, there's 2 of them, and then I'll sit down. I talked too much already. That it comes back to the discontinuation and decommissioning, but it also relates to some of the requirements for escrow. This that there's been a lot of, most of the counties that we work with have been putting a lot of thought into the decommissioning plans, because some of those first round of wind projects are starting to get repowered to go through decommissioning. And it's not all rainbows and puppy dog tails. That is an area where I don't think you have too much detail on there. But again, talking to some of the folks on our committees with a background in finance, I did economic development finance training, but it was a long time ago. Cash escrow is potentially a huge liability. You probably don't want to go there. You shouldn't go there by what we've been told. A letter of credit from a reputable agency, banker agency, or a certain type of performance bond is going to be much more likely to be able to perform when you need it. The other is the five-year renewal. Some places are making those. We're just going to look at this every 5 years. You also want to make sure on solar that is a gross, not net, because you never know if there's going to be a recycling market. This year there isn't. So that actually is more strict. You want to make sure that's a gross, not a net. The other thing is, my understanding in Nebraska, from when we worked on those other projects, if you don't have a decommissioning plan, they can wait 10 years and then the state will step in and do that. I don't have that high level of trust in people, so you probably want that to be part of the proposal and the negotiation at that point.
Yeah. Going back to the escrow comment, and I guess instead of telling you that it's not a great idea, I think we need to tell you why we've been told this. Because if they hand you cash, first of all, your treasurer's going to have to keep track of all this in different accounts, number one. Does the county really want to do that? That's number one. Number two, if they give you cash and something, they go belly up, we've been told that escrow can be counted as part of their proceeds if they go bankrupt.
And can be clawed back.
And can be pulled back to pay off their creditors. So you don't have as much protection with cash as you might think you do, because it can be, the creditors can reach and grab it and pull it back.
Which seems counterintuitive. But the whole legal system seems counterintuitive. And this is, again, you do what works for your county, but make sure your treasurer, make sure your insurers know that. I don't even want to, that's the other thing that goes back to the, when you're looking at these provisions for escrow, that, now, I know of smaller communities back east that do everything by escrow, that you make an application for a building permit, you put a deposit down, and they charge you whatever their contractor charges to review stuff. They do that, it's baked into their accounting system. That they do that for large projects, they do it for small projects. If you set that system up, is your accounting system going to be able to handle that? Do you have somebody in your zoning office who's going to be able to keep track of all that accounting stuff? And what are your auditors going to say when all of a sudden you got escrow stuff to keep track of? Now, if this is the best possible, if this is the best way to deal with this for the people of York County, go for it. It's just not commonly used out here in rural Nebraska. Doesn't mean it's not going to work. Like I said, I've worked in larger communities where we didn't do it that way, but there's advantages because you're actually assessing the cost it does for the service. It takes a lot of guesswork out of it. It's just, is it going to work for you?
And the only reason I guess we tell you this is because this is how we've been advised by our legal staff and all these people that understand this stuff, just to give you something to think about.
So, that's, I know, I kind of went from here to over there and the other. But it's one of those things, there are no easy, if there was an easy answer, you would have figured it out by now.
Right.
It's a no win, no lose, but you've got to protect the property rights on both sides of that. And we're there to try to help you back up whatever decision you make. Or if you say, hey, we need some more homework, that's part of our process, and it's a good time to do it. So, anything I missed, Keith, on that? So, and I actually, the funny thing is, I actually prefer the comp plan side, and because I've done the zoning I've been a county zoning guy, that I end up doing this stuff instead of the stuff I'd rather be doing. But I also know, as the zoning guy, how important it is to back those things up. So I know that's important, and I want to give you something that's going to work. That's at least what we're trying to do. So anyways, any other questions, Mr. Chairman?
You got anything else to add?
That's
Ben?
pretty much, that's what I wanted to cover. But, you know, when we get into the zoning, there's gonna be a lot of things that come up. This is just the one that's right in front of you right now. So yes, take the time you need, but we can address this. One of the things Keith had mentioned with that comp plan, this is an iterative process for us. So if we get this and then something else comes up, you know, we'll delve back in so that we're supported on that as well. But this is the most important thing to the people in this room today.
Now, the document that you're referring to, do you have more copies of that document?
The memo that
Yeah.
that I had sent that in on June 7th, I just have the one copy here.
Okay, all right, so
that
that's
zoning
one that
administrator
Nate would
should
have, okay.
have that on file, so it's publicly available there.
Yep, perfect. Gentlemen, do you have anything else to add or questions?
Not right now, I guess I'd like to open it up so the zoning board has any questions of Marvin.
They can. Doing that, then we'll open it up to everybody. Zoning board, do you guys have any questions of Marvin? Keith or John?
When looking at the comprehensive plan going forward 10, 20 years, do you foresee, like Iowa and other states, starting to have state law come down setting zoning on renewables?
Nebraska, maybe not so much.
We've seen some mixture. On the Nebraska side, I don't know what we're going to see come out of this election cycle. A handful of people that were really big on trying to curtail renewable energy are turned out. Specifically, Mr. Bosselman up my way and Mr. Brewer. Don't know what they're going to be replaced with yet. Have no idea. There was some good legislation being discussed in the legislature this last session. Didn't get anywhere, but I will tell you that they really opened our eyes on a few things that can help us with doing some of this a little bit better for our clients. And I'll indirectly just say it kind of validated the fact that we go into so much detail on the natural resources and environmental side. So if you read some of the stuff that they talked about in those bills for wind energy and that, they talk about the natural resources a lot in that. They refer a lot to the sandhills, but they gave us some, ability to look at some things.
There was also a proposal that was sponsored by the governor to eliminate public hearings from the planning commission, which I'm sure you're aware of, but an unintended effect of that would have been to curtail the planning commission's ability to hold a public hearing for renewable energy projects as well as livestock or anything else that might be a conditional use. So that's one where there are folks who want to be less restrictive on livestock, but that has a cascading effect on other things. So legislature give it, legislature take it away.
So, and our response to that is, in all disclosure, we've been working with AFAN, and they've been bringing in a bunch of other producers. We're actually looking at different ways to come in and get better decisions on livestock zoning, and better educated ones. And the other thing that we're looking at is based upon what the governor's bill tried to do, we're actually trying to come up with a new outline a process that fits within statute, but is a more detailed approach to public hearings in the conditional use process, so people have an ability to weigh in earlier on and without trying to take some of the contentiousness out of the hearing itself. So those are things that as we develop those, and I think Thayer County is going to try some of it, right? So,
Yeah, we'll see. We're gonna do everything but renewable energy in Thayer County this week and then attack renewable stuff, just because it's been so controversial.
so,
That, and part of it is that we recognize that we work with planning commissions all the time, and we recognize that we want that local input and control, because you guys are putting your time and effort in when you could be doing something you'd rather be doing. We recognize that as a plus, not as a negative, but we need to be able to address some of the concerns as they come up.
well, and I guess I need to disclose that to the planning commissioners, there's really only 3 ways to get off of the planning commission. That is, you either die, you move, or you get elected to higher office. Well, up until 2 years ago, I was a planning commissioner in David City for 30-some years. I'm no longer a planning commissioner. I still live in David City and I'm still breathing, so guess what I was stupid enough to do? So, I've been in your shoes. I understand the role that the planning commissioner is and how tough it is to make good decisions and recommendations.
Yeah.
So we try to set you guys up for success as much as possible.
Yeah, definitely on energy, like the commissioner said, that this year's election may have major changes in Washington, one way or the other. We don't know what they are. We have to make the best of what we've got. The other is, we don't want to adopt this thing and then immediately change it. But there comes a point where Keith and I could talk about this all night, but most of you would probably rather be at dinner with your family. So hopefully we make the best decision we can at a point and then immediately start to evaluate how well it's working.
Question on you said with our 4 categories, we have our zone into the 4 categories on the amount of energy they can produce. These things are always constantly changing and evolving. I mean, at one point, 1 megawatt might have been 10 acres, now it might be closer to 8 acres. Would you advise to change it to more like the amount of square area it covers, or is most people going with the amount of energy produced?
That the
That's a great
categories,
question.
yeah, the categories I've seen, and this is changing, and some people are doing it differently, and it depends where you're at. What California does has no indication on what we do. So really, that we're seeing it go by type. So if you are net metering, it's at 25. There are some places that are going to 100, but so 25 to 100 qualifies. So it's an accessory to. The difference is it on an existing building, or are they trying to put it out in a field and put it into the grid? That's one category. That's like small wind. You don't want people just putting up little bitty whirligigs up, other than for agriculture. Same thing with solar. You don't want just them out in the field unless they're actually real agriculture. So think about your accessory stuff that's small, that 100K or smaller. Then you get, what is the function? Is it a category for neighborhood that may be interconnected to the grid, but the primary and we put a fence around it in terms of production capacity. But if the major intention is to feed a neighborhood or a small village, that's one category. And then you get into the how much more they produce, because you're exactly right. What they need to do a meg today could probably produce 5 megs when they repower. We don't know.
Yeah,
What are the impacts? Think about this more about what are the impacts on the neighbors? And what are how much snow are these things going to catch? Are they going to act like a snow fence along the road? Think about how do they impact the neighbors, because frankly, I don't know if that's creating 1 meg or 100. It's big and ugly.
You're absolutely right, because I think when I first started digging into this, it took about 15 acres to generate a meg. And now we're down to about 7 or 8 acres to generate a meg. And I know developers that will go out, even though the return on investment, even though the return on investment for the current solar panels aren't there, the ability to reuse those in other parts of the world, the market's there that they can afford to come in and upgrade those panels to get more energy out of them because they're becoming more and more effective and energy efficient. So you may go from an area that is, say, 100 megawatts to 150, depending on how much technology advances in that time period.
And it may not
That
look
was
any
my
different.
question, 'cause I mean, if something was in category 3 now and they got improved efficiency and then they get jumped up to category 4 without anybody knowing. So I didn't know if maybe it should be like a land
Well, you
mass
want-
size instead of, just a
Different-
question, food for thought.
I've seen different recommendations from different sources. I was just reviewing some stuff from the National Renewable Energy Lab, and they say don't measure it on either one. It's, what are the impacts? They basically say small and big. If it's commercial, it's just commercial. Because frankly, that some of these, and I've seen really large projects, and I've seen small. We've done reviews some of these pretty large ones, and no, I get it. I don't want to live next door to that either. But when the categories, I don't know that there's that much difference between a category 3 and a category 4. It's more of thinking about what are the differential impacts on adjacent property owners,
Yeah.
roads.
So, going back to your comment, if you have someone that's producing 100 megawatt now in the same form, and they can come in and change out the panels, and they're now producing 150 megawatts in the same footprint, have they really impacted done anything to the impact of the surrounding area?
And you want to be clear if that repowering requires a new permit or not, because we've got lawyers arguing over that, over wind projects, and we can get two lawyers making perfectly cogent arguments on both sides of that. And pretty much, you just want to know, is it allowed or not?
See, and that's why I'm not, like, the footprint doesn't change.
So-
If we have it classified by amount of energy produced, the
You need-
footprint stayed the same, it didn't affect
Yeah.
any of the same visuals, and then all of a sudden it bumped to the category side.
And no offense to Nate, but you can get 2 attorneys in the room and have 4 opinions.
Yeah.
None of them are right.
Yeah, so, but no, that's a good thing to think about.
None of them are right.
I know there are reasons why you're trying to give people more flexibility and have more nuances in your performance standards. But does that get you to where you want to be? Then it's great. Is that just making life more complicated and you're going to end up having twice as many hearings as you want? Well, I'd rather go home and have dinner with my family, but what fits you? So that's the crux of the thing, and there's probably at the end of the day not that much difference between 3 and 4. But be clear, does taking from 3 to 4 require a permit? Yes or no? Make sure that's in your standards.
Any other questions from zoning? Nate, do you have anything? Okay. And seeing how we did open it up to the public, does anybody else from the public, we'll give them an opportunity now to ask a question if they wish.
Randy, I'll go first. I guess the biggest question, probably elephant in the room, is do you plan to work through the comp plan prior to addressing solar zoning? Or are we going to continue progressing the solar zoning topic unilaterally with the comp plan?
I would say that the answer to that would be, depending on what this board decides in a meeting, whether we decide to go with recommendations, whether we look at the recommendations and think they, in a sense, toss them back to the zoning board to say, well, these are some of our concerns with those regulations. So that would be, to me, one of the 2 ways that will go. I do not see this board, my personal opinion would be, I do not see this board just making unilateral changes to all of them without re-involving the zoning board.
Thank you.
But I guess the other question is, you're not gonna sit here and wait till we get the comp plan done in order to necessarily decide on this.
No, we need to keep moving forward. Absolutely. And as you guys have stated, you know, when we make those decisions on those zoning, we need to be thinking about that comp plan and how those are gonna to merge together and work together. So those decisions need to be heartfelt.
And I don't believe that the proposal came out of Planning Commission is opposed to our standard background in the comp plan. But whatever comes up, we have to make sure that we are supporting that.
Right. Anybody else?
I have a question that's probably too late. Why the state of Nebraska doesn't have any rules or regulations about the companies that come in to develop these things? They don't have to be licensed, they don't have to be registered, they don't have to be insured. They just show up and they start throwing stuff out and you get, I don't understand why, anyway, it's too late, but I'm here for this one. But that's been one of my concerns from the get-go, because then when I talked to John Hanson after that last meeting, I was talking to him about who our developer was, and he said, anyway, we can't mention names.
Right.
but He wasn't thrilled with them either, so that's one of my concerns.
Anybody else? Okay. Board, once again?
I think it's.
Hey, Leroy.
Hi. Sorry, I apologize.
We're not gonna start over.
It's recorded. It's been recorded.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there's good things that we need to take back now and think about, and then, like you said, move forward with making a decision. But yeah, as just specific questions, I think not this time anyway.
Okay.
I will add that there are several reasons I know that people are against the wind or the solar. Is one, they're ugly. Two, we've actually proven in some cases that some of them are not getting part of the payment and their neighbor is, so be honest, that's part of it. But there's a lot of different things, you know, and some of it's just a principle issue. They don't believe in it, and that's the way it is. And the other thing that people get upset about that I've seen is a lot of this stuff goes out onto the grid and it's headed to the Southwest Power Pool. And it's not staying local. And that's the downside to what we have. That's the nature of a national grid, unfortunately.
Well, the concern I have is you're taking agricultural land that's very good producing property, putting it 100 miles away from Omaha in this particular case. And there's land between here and Omaha that would be just as likely to be used as this agricultural land in York County.
Yeah.
And York County is what, is it the highest or the second highest producers of corn in the state of Nebraska? Now you're taking away some land. You know, I hate to put it this way, but if all the farmers in this country quit producing, how long would it take for this world to starve?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Don't
you
disagree
need to
with
breathe oxygen, but you need to eat too.
Yeah. So, now, one of the things I'm a believer in is that when you do allow these, one of those things that you need to allow for and require is to have them plant underneath these plants and stuff that will attract pollinators, because without bees, we're all screwed too.
Yeah,
So-
I didn't bring up agrivoltaics, but that is something that there are several demo projects being taken on in the States, both east and west of here, where if you allow them tall enough that they can graze underneath, most of them are sheep. You don't want goats because they'll eat the things. But they are actually a demo project I saw where they're tall enough that they can get cattle grazing underneath them.
You mentioned that you had worked in Wyoming.
I've worked in Wyoming and Colorado and
Well,
Montana.
I'm just gonna talk about Wyoming right now, because my brother lives there, and he lives closest to one of the largest disposal areas for these
Oh,
windmill blades.
Yes.
And they have to replace them every, 3 to 5 years?
I'm not sure.
Well, I think that's what I heard. And they're manufactured. The stuff they use to manufacture them actually takes more energy than if you would drill for oil.
Yeah. You don't live far from one of the largest disposal sites in the Midwest either. Just 3 miles north of me in David City.
Yeah.
That's why-
I haven't been out there to see them, but I've heard they're out there.
That's why we call this a republic, because people still have a right to vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Not hearing any more questions. I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. The board will put this on the agenda. I'm not sure if it'll make the next meeting or not. We just got over the protest hearings that we're dealing with or dealt with. But once again, thanks to the zoning commission and you guys for showing up. We will get, it looks like, we need to, one of the first things we need to get is kind of the steering committee for you
Yeah.
assembled, who it is, and get that ready to go. And then we will be in touch. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We're adjourned.